So I finished my whole January TBR. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I am going to be doing another weekly wrap up. I had 1 week off in January, so like for the first week of from December 30th all the way to January 5th, I was off and I had the pleasure of actually spending some time for myself and actually picking up a few of the books that I set myself up for my January TBR, and I actually managed to go through all of them and actually finish them. I did DNF 2 books that I did plan to start reading because they weren't just my style, and I will discuss more about those books later. But I also did pick up a lot of books that I really did enjoy, and I wish that you guys can pick these up as soon as possible because I really want to discuss about them with people and just fangirl over them. So without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I picked up on December 31st, but I actually finished this book on January 1st, 2020, making this my first physical read of the year, is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. And now this book is amazing. Like, I really enjoyed it. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a diverse romance, definitely pick this one up. Our main character is actually, I believe she's Puerto Rican descent, but there's a lot of Brazilian cultures and food mentioned in this book that made me like really want to read more about this culture, and it made me really want to try their foods because it just sounded delicious and it sounded great. So I talked about this book during my January TBR, and I also did write a full review on my Goodreads page. The links are always down below in my description box. So a very short summary is that this book is about a wedding planner who is planning to marry the man of her dreams, but turns out he ran away on the day of the wedding and he doesn't want to marry her anymore. And the reason why is because the groom's little brother and also the best man managed to convince him not to marry her. So clearly they do not have a good relationship. Fast forward 3 years later, they see each other again in this really important meeting where she is being offered this really grand title wedding planning job at this very famous grand hotel, and she has to work with the best man, also the ex-fiance's little brother. So a lot of shenanigans do happen. I really did enjoy the story. I felt that there was this really great romantic connection between the two main characters, and there's a lot of sexual attention, and they were both very attractive people and they both had their flaws, and it was just a great story overall. The only problems I did have with this novel is that it didn't have enough oomph to push it over the edge and to make me give it a 5 out of 5 star rating. I felt that it kind of fizzled out towards the end. I don't have any problems with the conflict and the reason why they couldn't be together, but I just wanted more angst and I wanted more something to make me feel more attached to these characters. But I highly recommend you to pick up this novel. This novel releases in February 2020, and thank you to Harper Collins Canada for sending me a copy. So the next book that I picked up is Plain Jane's by Cecile Castellucci, and this is actually a young adult graphic novel that was sent to me by Hachette Book Group. And I surprisingly got into graphic novels and comic books, but more about that later. And I decided to pick one up on my ARC shelf that I've requested a few months back. And I picked this up because I thought that I had such a great time reading my other middle grade graphic novel that I got from Hachette that I talked about in my last reading wrap up, The Deep, Dark, and Blue. So I thought that this would be a next fantastic graphic novel for me to read, but unfortunately I couldn't get into the story. I just didn't really like the writing. The writing style was very kind of bland and boring and also very depressing. Our characters were very confusing as well, and I didn't really understand the traumatic event that actually happened to make our main character leave the town that she was born in. And I don't think that the graphics did a great job at explaining the situation. I also was not really that great of a fan of the fan art, so I actually had to DNF this book. It did not capture my attention long enough for me to actually sit through and read a 343-page graphic novel. So the next novel that I picked up is a young adult novel. Now this is my first young adult novel that I picked up in the year 2020, and I was very excited to jump back into the genre. In my 2020 resolutions, I think I did mention that I want to read a young adult, or I want to jump back into the young adult genre, and since I did read Tiana Smith, I was really excited to pick this one up. So this book is about these two characters. It's an enemies to lovers romance. So these two characters are in high school. They're also on the debate team, and she was doing really well on the debate team, and she was ranked #1 until this new guy moved into town and took her spot. So now they're competing against each other. They're also in the same AP history class, and they have this number system where they don't put their names on their reports that they hand in, and they only put in their student numbers to keep privacy reasons. And the teacher accidentally mixes up the reports, and the teacher actually hands them back by stuffing them into cubby holes so that you just go into the cubby hole that belongs to you and you pick out your report. She realizes that it's been messed up, so she leaves a note into the cubby hole that belongs to the report that she got. They end up exchanging notes throughout the whole entire book without realizing who they're exchanging notes with. And this book, I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars or 2 out of 5 stars. The reason why is because the synopsis is a major spoiler. They try to play it off that we don't really know who the person she's exchanging notes with is, but the synopsis clearly tells you who she's exchanging the notes with. So it ruined the angst, and it ruined like the whole point of the story and the whole plot. It wasn't as fluffy as it could be, but the writing was still okay at best, but it was kind of childish for me for a young adult novel. So the next book that I read was 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston, and this book was highly recommended to me by a lot of booktubers here and also from a lot of friends outside of the booktube community, and I was really excited that I got an art copy when I went to the Indigo Teen Preview event. And I'm kind of sad because I read it after Christmas, but I figured that because this book takes place between Christmas and New Year's, it still matches because I read it in the first week of January. So this book is about a girl named Sophie, and Sophie is doing great for herself. She has like a mood board with all her plans laid out in front of her. She knows what she wants to do for university. She knows where her life is going. And she also has a boyfriend that she's been dating like steadily for a whole year. And it's until she goes to a party where she sees her boyfriend talk to his best friend about how he just wants to have fun and he doesn't know if he wants to date her anymore. And they leave the party, they're broken up, and she's completely heartbroken. She returns back home to her big Italian family, and her whole Italian family is telling her that he's a jerk, you know, you shouldn't waste your time on this guy, and you shouldn't feel sad about this guy. So what they do is that they actually set her up for 10 blind dates from the period of, I believe, like December 19th all the way to like January 1st. And I found that this story was fun. Like the idea was fun that she was getting set up on 10 blind dates, but the problem I had was that you've been dating a guy for a whole year. I think it's reasonable and it's healthy for you to feel sad about the relationship, and I felt that it was really weird that the family couldn't even let her have those emotions and that they just pushed her into this 10 blind dates like marathon competition thing. And I was just like, okay, like just let her live. So without thinking about that part being really weird, this book was still enjoyable. However, I did have a problem with the writing once again. I'm very particular with my young adult novels. A lot of people do say that young adult novels read very childishly, and I never thought of that way until as I grow older and as I'm reading more young adult, I realize what other people are saying. And this one was definitely written in a very childish way. Like our character Sophie was a senior, but she didn't sound like she was a senior. She sounded like she was in grade 9, which is like, no offense to my younger viewers here. I just wanted someone more mature. And so this is the reason why I give it 3 out of 5 star rating. I still recommend it to you to read if you want a light Christmas, New Year's, fluffy YA novel. So the next book that I picked up is Theyre Married by Gigi Lavengi. And now this book I talked about in my January TBR. It was part of my January TBR. It was sent to me by St. Martin's Press, and I was very excited to read it because the cover is gorgeous and the synopsis sounded really great. I thought it was going to be this coming of age novel for this woman who has been married for so long, who has a child, who's middle-aged, and I thought it was just going to be this grand adventure themed novel. What I found was that the writing was severely choppy. It was written in a way that was way too complicated. It sounded like Gigi just wanted to string a line of like witty clauses and like jokes all into this like one gigantic sentence that made you confused at like the basics. Like you didn't even know what was happening in the scene because it was jam-packed with all these acronyms, all these jokes, and it really drew me out of the story. I really tried to push my way through it, and I really wanted to get through it into the middle at least. But after going on Goodreads after reading 50 pages and realizing that the problem wasn't just me and it was actually the book, and how the ratings were already in the 2-star rating zone. I decided that I was just going to DNF this book. A lot of reviews did say that the book does get better towards the later half, but I just couldn't sit through it. Life's too short to give chances to books that make me super annoyed. So I had to DNF this book, and if I were to rate it, I'll give it 2 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I read in 2019 happens to be The God Game by Danny Toby, and I hauled this like a couple weeks back, and St. Martin's Press was kind enough to give me this copy. I was super excited to read this book because I thought it was going to be an adult thriller and an adult sci-fi thriller at that, but it turned out to be a young adult sci-fi thriller, not really science fiction, because it just talks about AI technology and a lot of coding and a lot of hacking. And if you're a fan of that, then definitely check out this book. I would recommend this book to people who like 1984 by George Orwell. But this book follows a group of teenagers. They're all different characters. You know, we got the leader of the group, who is the saint, who's the angel, and then we got the girl who is feisty and who wants to get into Harvard. We got another guy that turned super weird and now he's being really creepy, but he's still a part of the friend group. And then we got this rich guy who thinks that he's all that. So it's just like a group of characters that all game and code together. So when they're introduced to this game called The God Game, which is an AI technology game that knows everything that you do outside of the game, like it literally maps your life and like it maps like your surroundings to the point that you can't tell what's real and what's not. It gets a little interesting, but at the same time it was really heavy. Like this book was like close to 500 pages and I was just waiting for something interesting to happen. Halfway through the book they were still playing the game, and yes, you get to learn about the backstories of all these characters, and yes, these characters are interesting in a way, but the other half of the story you just start not caring about the characters anymore. I just couldn't care anymore for some reason. Like I only could care up to a certain point, to the point where I realized that the book wasn't much about how the AI technology game was really controlling them and making them into bad people. It was just more so they were just bad people. This book wasn't just for me, and I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I thought it was a very mediocre book. I also thought the ending was way too open-ended. So that is it for all the physical books that I did read this week. I did read a lot of comic books and lots of graphic novels that I want to talk about because I'm shocked and surprised that I read these novels myself. If we do a little throwback.
I'm actually not too keen on graphic novels. I don't read a lot of them, simply because, I don't know, like my brain doesn't work that way. Like I need more words than just dialogue.
Hopefully you guys can find some recommendations from this video and let me know if you read any of these books that I just talked about, and we could discuss it down in the comments down below. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.